To you, night is nothing. You lock the door, dim the lights, and drift off without a single thought about it. But strip all of that away. No walls, no lock, no light at all, nothing between you and the dark. Drop yourself into the very same night your ancestors knew, tens of thousands of years ago. And suddenly one question outranks every other you have ever asked. Will you still be alive when the sun comes up? For most of human history, that was never a guarantee. For more than 300,000 years, surviving the night was the single hardest thing a human did. Because the moment darkness fell on the ancient world, everything changed. Humans stopped being the most dangerous animal around, and deep down, they knew it. Everything that hunted us could see in the dark far, far better than we ever could. So how did they make it through, night after night, for 10,000 generations? What they did to survive is stranger than you would ever guess, and part of it is still buried inside you right now. Start with our single greatest weakness after dark: the eyes. We are built for daylight, and in true darkness, a human being is very nearly helpless. But the predators stalking us in the black had no such problem at all. A lion drinks in the faintest starlight. To them, the middle of the night looked almost like the afternoon. So the instant the sun dropped below the horizon, the whole balance of power flipped. A human standing out in the open after dark was not a hunter anymore. Slow, half-blind and soft, he was simply food. Even today, the people most likely to be taken by a predator are the ones who drift away from the group at night. So the very first rule of the ancient world was brutal, and it was simple. When the light died, you did not move. You put your back against something solid. You stayed dead still, and you waited out the long hours until the first gray light of dawn. And then, one animal did something that no creature on Earth had ever done before. We learned to hold fire. Fire. A single flickering flame cupped in our hands against the enormous, endless dark. Some of the oldest solid evidence of humans controlling it comes from Wonderwork Cave, roughly 1 million years ago. But fire was never just about warmth. It was a weapon against the darkness itself. A fire carves out a pocket of light, and inside that pocket, the entire logic of survival changes. Predators had spent millions of years learning that an open flame means danger, and they will not cross into it. Stay inside the glow, and you lived. Drift a single step beyond it, and you were prey all over again, which created a duty no living thing had ever carried before. The fire could not be allowed to die. Let the flames go out in the small hours, and the darkness, and everything waiting inside it came flooding straight back. So every single night, someone stayed awake, feeding the flames and guarding the light. It was the very first watch that human beings ever stood. But teeth were not the only thing hunting you in the dark. The cold killed just as easily, and far more quietly. A single freezing night could take a sleeping human without a sound, and without a struggle. So our ancestors thought it. They got far cleverer than we ever give them credit for. At Border Cave in South Africa, researchers uncovered bedding almost 200,000 years old, not just a heap of grass. It was built up in careful layers and topped with leaves that drive insects away. 200,000 years ago, people were deliberately engineering a warm, clean, defended place to sleep. They packed in close together for the shared body heat and always kept the fire between themselves and the night. And here is where the story takes a turn that science itself only managed to piece together a few decades ago. The way you are going to sleep tonight is not the way that human beings were ever built to sleep. In 2001, a historian named Roger Eckertz published research that quietly overturned everything we had assumed. He had spent 16 long years combing through old letters, court records, doctor's notes, even ancient poetry. And the same strange little detail kept surfacing hundreds and hundreds of times across whole centuries. They called it first sleep and second sleep. People went to bed after dark, slept for about 4 hours, then woke on purpose in the dead of the night. They stayed up for an hour or two and then lay back down for a second sleep right through until first light. This was not insomnia. This was simply how nearly every human on Earth slept for thousands upon thousands of years. And that waking hour was not wasted. They prayed, they fed the fire, they murmured to whoever lay beside them. One old medical text even claimed it was the very best hour of the whole night to conceive a child. For generations, historians read these accounts and simply dismissed them as confusion or nonsense. They could not picture anyone sleeping differently than we do, so they assumed the words had to mean something else. And then, at long last, the science finally caught up with the history. In 1992, a researcher named Thomas Weir stripped away every last trace of artificial light from a group of volunteers. 14 hours of pure darkness every night, exactly like the ancient world. And within a few weeks, something remarkable happened. Every single one of them fell into the very same pattern on their own. 4 hours? A stretch of waking? Then 4 hours more. Nobody had told them to do it. Nobody had even suggested it to them. It was as if some ancient instruction had been sitting there, waiting quietly inside them the whole time. And when Weir measured their brains during that middle-of-the-night gap, he found them flooded with prolactin. It is the same calm, dreamlike chemistry your body pours out during the very deepest states of meditation. They described the feeling as peaceful, still, and watchful, a state of mind that almost no living person has ever felt. And just notice what that strange split in the night actually did for staying alive. Across the entire span of the darkness, someone in the group was always awake. The dark was never, not even once, left unguarded. So what filled all of those long waking hours around the fire? Mostly, we told each other things. An anthropologist named Polly Wiesner spent years recording one of the last people still living close to the old way. By day, she found, the talk was almost entirely practical. Where to hunt, which plants were ripe, who owed what to whom. Daytime words were work, plain and simple. But the very moment the fire was lit, the entire tone of the conversation shifted. At night, the overwhelming majority of all that talk turned into stories. Tales of distant places, of strange adventures, and jokes that cracked the whole camp up with laughter. And the great sweeping myths of where everything came from acted out in shadows across the cave wall. Wiesner came to believe that this, right here, talk by firelight, is where human culture actually caught fire. The campfire was our first theater, our first classroom, and our first temple, all of it at once. It is where we first learned to imagine things that were not standing in front of us at all. Surviving the night, it turns out, is exactly where we quietly became human. And then, almost overnight in the long story of our species, we went and killed the dark. It began back in the 1600s, when cities like Paris strung up lamps to try and push back the crime. Cheaper candles followed. Then came the gas lamps, each one shoving the night back just a little bit further. And in 1879, Thomas Edison handed the entire world the electric light bulb. In little more than a single human lifetime, the night that had shaped us for 300,000 years was gone. We even sealed the memory of it away inside a single word: curfew. It comes from an old French phrase, couvre-feu, and it means, quite literally, to cover the fire. In medieval towns, a bell would ring out each evening, and everyone would smother their flames. Because the night was meant to be dark, and to be out in it was to be up to no good. People feared the dark back then in a way that is almost completely impossible for us to imagine today. And then we simply flooded it with light, and we told ourselves that all of this was progress. But nobody ever bothered to tell your body. Underneath everything, it is still obeying rules that were written across 300,000 years of darkness. It is why the cold blue glow of your phone at midnight quietly convinces your brain that morning has already arrived. It shuts down your melatonin, it fractures your sleep, and it jams a body clock far older than our entire species. A clock that evolved over millions of years, thrown completely out of rhythm in the span of a single generation. Researchers found that just one single week of camping, with no artificial light, snaps that clock right back into place. Within days, the body goes back to releasing melatonin at sunset. That is how astonishingly deep the old wiring runs. And that jolt awake at 2 in the morning, the one you curse under your breath and call insomnia, it may never, ever have been broken at all. It may be the ancient night watch powering itself back on inside you, right on schedule. Your body still trying to guard the dark, still remembering, in its own quiet way, how it once kept you alive. Your ancestors won this fight every single night for 300,000 years, against the cold, against the dark, and against the eyes waiting just beyond the edge of the firelight. You are here, right now, reading this, only because every last one of them made it to morning. You just get to sleep straight through the war that they fought for you.